who I am. I want to pour into my team as much as possible, and I'm pretty in tune with my body. I can read a room pretty well, and so when I see we're lacking a little bit, you got to step up. But if we're good, you're just there to encourage and give people confidence.
Nobody could have predicted that the biggest controversy of the entire basketball season would come from the very people who were supposed to safeguard the future of the sport. When Caitlin Clark first stepped into Indiana, she wasn't just another draft pick joining a roster. She arrived carrying the enormous financial expectations of an entire league on her back, bringing with her sold-out arenas, record-breaking multi-million-dollar TV deals, and a massive wave of brand-new fans who had never tuned into a game before. Naturally, anyone would assume that the Indiana Fever front office would roll out the red carpet instantly, build an impenetrable shield around their new crown jewel, and do absolutely everything in their power to make sure her transition into the professional level was smooth and protected. Instead, what unfolded over the following months looked far less like a celebration and far more like a slow, calculated unraveling that left the entire sports world stunned. Fans quickly realized that something felt off about the way the organization, especially at the highest executive level, was handling their newest superstar. Strange coaching choices that made no strategic sense, public comments that came across as cold and dismissive, and a shocking unwillingness to defend her when opponents delivered harsh, unnecessary cheap shots all pointed toward a serious and deeply rooted disconnect behind the scenes. At first, the rumors were subtle, quietly circulating across social media threads and late-night sports discussions suggesting that veteran executives were more focused on humbling the rookie than uplifting her. But those whispers didn't stay quiet for long. They rapidly grew into a deafening chorus when an unexpected and fearless voice from a rival team decided she had seen enough and chose to expose what was really going on. In the end, it took a fierce competitor from outside the organization to shine a spotlight on the troubling situation unfolding within Indiana itself. And what she revealed sent shockwaves throughout the entire sports landscape. But to fully grasp how deep this shocking betrayal runs, you have to go back and examine the clear pattern of disrespect that began the moment draft night came to a close. The early warning signs were impossible to ignore from the very first game of the season. They left fans confused and questioning everything they were watching. While the national media rushed to crown a new face of the league and celebrate skyrocketing ratings, the Indiana Fever coaching staff and management appeared determined to treat her not as a generational talent, but as a problem they were forced to manage. Supporters watched in disbelief as head coach Christy Sides repeatedly made puzzling rotation decisions, pulling her star player during crucial offensive stretches and implementing slow, methodical systems that completely erased the fast-paced, deep-shooting identity that made Clark so dominant in the first place. This didn't look like normal rookie adjustment struggles. It felt deliberate, almost as if the system itself was designed to hold her back. Every time the rookie began to heat up and energize the crowd, a sudden timeout would be called or an unexpected substitution would disrupt the rhythm and kill all momentum instantly. The offense was consistently funneled through veteran players who simply couldn't keep up with her tempo, leaving one of the most dynamic college point guards ever standing off to the side like nothing more than a decoy. When questioned by reporters about these questionable decisions, the coaching staff often responded with dismissive answers, layered with subtle condescension about how she needed to adapt to the professional game and prove herself. It didn't feel like standard coaching strategy. It felt more like a harsh initiation process that had the full backing of the organization's leadership. But the issues with offensive management were only a small piece of a much bigger and more troubling picture. The real outrage exploded when the physical targeting began to escalate on the court. Opponents seemed to single her out, delivering blindside hits, throwing elbows, and committing aggressive fouls that clearly crossed the line of normal competitive play. In almost any other professional league, a franchise would immediately demand accountability and protection for their star player. A coach would be willing to pick up a technical foul or even get ejected just to send a message. Think about how the NBA once protected Michael Jordan, or how hockey teams rely on enforcers to defend their top players from cheap shots. But in this case, the Indiana leadership remained eerily silent. Night after night, their franchise centerpiece was left to absorb punishment with little more than generic, cautious post-game comments offered to the media. No effort was made to bring in a physical veteran presence during the off-season. No adjustments were made to provide her with on-court protection. It became increasingly obvious that the front office, influenced by an old-school mindset, was willing to let the rookie endure this treatment as some kind of lesson about hierarchy within the league, even if it meant putting the long-term well-being of the very player driving their unprecedented revenue at risk. As the bruises became more visible and the losses continued to stack up early in the season, the growing fan base began to realize this wasn't simple incompetence. It looked like a coordinated effort from the top down to wear her down mentally and physically. But just as this quiet and calculated campaign seemed unstoppable, it ran into a completely unexpected obstacle that no one inside the organization was prepared for. Enter Sophie Cunningham, the player who completely turned the narrative on its head. If there is one athlete in the league who refuses to play along with polished corporate messaging, it's the Phoenix Mercury veteran. Known for her intensity, fearless trash talk, and unwillingness to back down from anyone, Cunningham has built a reputation as someone who speaks her mind without hesitation, no matter who it might offend. While the rest of the league continued delivering polished, media-trained responses about the incoming rookie class and carefully sidestepping the obvious tension brewing behind closed doors, Sophie chose a completely different, far more explosive path. She looked out at the packed arenas, the long-awaited luxury charter flights players had been fighting for over a decade, and the surge of mainstream attention flooding the league, and she immediately understood exactly who was driving all of it. Even more importantly, she saw straight through the forced smiles and carefully managed public personas of veteran executives who were quietly frustrated that a young rookie was receiving the spotlight they believed they had earned over years. Cunningham has never been known to hold back her thoughts. And through a series of high-profile interviews and unfiltered podcast appearances, she began dropping powerful, unmistakable clues about the toxic gatekeeping that had taken root within the league's leadership. She openly suggested that veteran players and front office figures needed to put their pride aside and recognize the reality of the league's new financial boom instead of attempting to undermine the very player fueling it. She made it crystal clear that rising salaries, increased visibility, and booming endorsement opportunities were all directly tied to this surge of attention, and that the bitterness she was witnessing wasn't just unnecessary, it was damaging to the business itself. Even though she stopped short of naming individuals at first, anyone paying attention could easily connect the dots. She was watching the same games as the fans. She noticed the obvious absence of physical protection in Indiana. She heard the questionable, subtly dismissive comments coming from the Fever's leadership, who seemed more focused on preserving the comfort of established veterans than building a dominant system around their emerging star. Sophie's brutally honest stance struck a nerve across the entire sports world because it validated everything frustrated fans had been shouting for months. She shattered the illusion of complete unity within the league, revealing that deep-seated jealousy was influencing decisions at the highest levels. But those early hints were only the beginning. The situation escalated dramatically when the unspoken rules governing the inner circle of league leadership were dragged into full public view. The pressure reached a breaking point as reports about the troubling dynamics inside Indiana's front office began surfacing more frequently. Rumors spread quickly that the Fever president and key executives were facing serious internal strain, not only from an outraged and growing fan base, but also from the realization that their outdated approach was actively hurting what had become a rapidly expanding billion-dollar brand. Cunningham's outspoken comments acted as a spark, encouraging insiders and team affiliates to quietly share details with reporters about the true nature of the organization's internal struggles. It was revealed that leadership was allegedly placing the egos of veteran players and long-standing league figures above both the performance and safety of their star rookie. Reports suggested that management had no issue with the coach's momentum-disrupting strategies because they aligned perfectly with an old-school mentality that demanded the rookie earn her place the hard way, regardless of the cost to the team's success. This approach, seen as both arrogant and dismissive, ignited a wave of anger among the rapidly growing fan base. Supporters who had invested heavily in tickets, merchandise, and travel felt betrayed as it appeared the organization itself was allowing a toxic environment to exist around the very player they came to support. Online communities quickly mobilized, digging up past statements, analyzing press conference behavior, and pointing out the consistent lack of strong public backing from leadership during moments of controversy. Every unpunished cheap shot during games, every poorly executed late-game play call, became further evidence in the eyes of fans that the issue extended far beyond the court. Sophie's refusal to conform to the league's carefully controlled messaging exposed the contradiction at the heart of the situation. She gave both fans and media the confidence to openly acknowledge what had long been suspected. The individuals in charge were not pushing the league forward, they were holding it back. Their obsession with maintaining the old power structure had reached a point where it was threatening the future of their own franchise. And as public scrutiny intensified, The pressure began building toward what looked like a potential collapse at the highest levels of the Indiana organization. In today's hyperconnected sports landscape, it's nearly impossible to carry out a quiet campaign of suppression without eventually facing widespread backlash. Especially when a respected competitor is willing to speak out so directly on a national stage. The situation quickly spiraled beyond the control of the Indiana front office, and the narrative they had tried so carefully to manage slipped completely out of their hands. Then, out of nowhere, breaking news exploded across timelines and sent shockwaves throughout the entire basketball world. The Fever president suddenly announced that she would be stepping away from her powerful position at the end of the season. The organization immediately scrambled to control the narrative, releasing the usual vague corporate statements filled with generic language about pursuing new opportunities and transitioning into advisory roles. But nobody was fooled for even a moment. The timing was far too convenient, and the warning signs had been building ever since fan outrage reached a boiling point in the middle of the season. This wasn't some calm, well-planned departure. It was a pressured, uncomfortable exit driven by the undeniable truth that the current leadership simply wasn't capable of managing a modern global superstar. The exposure of their outdated mindset, amplified daily by relentless fan criticism and the blunt honesty of outspoken players like Cunningham, made their positions impossible to maintain. They had made the critical mistake of believing they could humble the most influential player in the sport while still maintaining complete control over the organization's culture. And that gamble completely backfired. The fanbase reacted to the departure as if it were a major victory, seeing it as the first necessary step toward removing the toxic environment that had overshadowed the rookie's highly anticipated debut season. But even with the figurehead gone, the damage left behind sparked serious concerns about the rest of the coaching staff and the deeply rooted issues that still needed to be fixed before the next season began. This major executive shakeup proved something that many had long doubted. That sustained fan pressure and widespread media attention could actually force meaningful change in a league that had often resisted outside criticism. Still, the battle over the identity and future of the franchise was far from finished. This entire saga goes far beyond missed calls, questionable play designs, or one frustrated executive. It stands as a defining example of a massive generational clash within the sport. For more than 20 years, the WNBA operated within a very specific and tightly controlled environment. It was a constant grind for recognition, built on the resilience of veteran players who fought to establish the league's identity. Naturally, those veterans developed a deep sense of ownership and pride in what they had created. But when a new era suddenly emerged, bringing private charter flights, massive endorsement deals, and millions of new viewers to the game, the established leadership faced a critical decision. Adapt to the spotlight or resist it in an attempt to preserve tradition. The Indiana front office chose resistance, trying to force a revolutionary talent into an outdated system that couldn't contain her style or impact. In doing so, they disconnected from the new generation of fans and unintentionally fueled a massive backlash. Sophie Cunningham's role in this unfolding drama became incredibly important because she represents the connection between both eras. She embodies the toughness and competitiveness of the league's past while fully embracing the opportunities of its future. She demonstrated that it's possible to compete fiercely without falling into negativity or resentment. A player can want to dominate an opponent on the court while still recognizing and respecting the broader growth they bring to the sport. The public fallout from the Fever president's inability to understand this simple reality now stands as a powerful warning to every executive, general manager, and coach across the league. The days of operating quietly behind the scenes, where internal politics and fragile egos dictate decisions, are over. Every move is now under constant scrutiny. Fans analyze every substitution, every quote, every reaction in real time. And today's players are no longer afraid to speak openly and challenge the system when something feels wrong. The old way of doing things has been dragged into the modern era whether leadership likes it or not. And those who refuse to evolve will quickly find themselves replaced and left behind.